What is up, guys? You are here to learn about a forehand. I already shot like most of this video, the talking points, but it was really windy and the audio was really bad. So I'm here in the backyard, hopefully getting better audio. But let's do what the video title says. Let's examine the forehand throw. I will be giving some of my thoughts about my own forehand throw later in the video and kind of tying what I'm about to tell you into that. But first, I'm going to give you some forehand pointers and kind of break down the forehand throw. First off, you need a disc. And with that disc, you need to grip that disc. There's 3 different forehand grips that I like. The one that I use is the stacked grip, which means you have your middle finger and index finger pressed on the inside of the disc. The next grip, Paul McBeth, Nate Sexton, Avery Jenkins use this grip. It's the forehand power grip. You have your middle finger padded up against the inside of the rim, but you have your index finger kind of pointed in. What this does, it gives 2 more pressure points, allowing you to get a little bit more friction off your throw, supposedly making you able to throw a little bit further. And the last one is the forehand fan grip. Silverlat, Austin Hannum used this grip, both of which are really good forehand players. You have your middle finger pressed up against the inside of the rim, and you have your index finger kind of in the middle. This is a great option for those people who have a lot of issues rolling the wrist or kind of maybe generating a lot of so-called power and not getting clean releases. This is a grip that I would recommend you trying. And the thing that's universal amongst those 4 grips is the top part of the grip and some of the most important parts of the forehand grip. So first is the thumb position. I would say that you don't, there's the wind. There's the wind. One sec. Okay, first off is the thumb position. I would say you see this C-Line Color Glow FD3. I'd say put your thumb somewhere in between where the rim meets the flight plate. So right about where I have it is a kind of good rule of thumb. See what I did there? That's a good thumb placement. You don't want to have it falling off the disc or too far in the middle. The web of your finger, this kind of slot between your index finger and thumb, press the disc up into it. You don't want to have it all loosey-goosey in there. You don't want to be able to stick any fingers in there. So having it kind of holstered kind of firmly in that crease is very ideal. And then lastly, what I like to do, I take my ring finger and pinky finger and I kind of press them up against the rim, allowing me to kind of get a little bit more pressure, which I feel helps me control the angle of the disc a little bit better. So that's the grip. Find what's comfortable, but kind of use those 3 grips and kind of what the thumb and placing of the disc as a guideline, but find what's comfortable for you. Next thing is use your wrist. A backhand is a straight wrist throw. A forehand is not. You want your wrist completely loaded back, so cocked back. What this is going to do is going to help you release the disc quicker, get more snap, more speed. So getting that as much wrist cock back as possible is going to help you get a cleaner release. So very important. If you're throwing forehand with a straight wrist, you're probably missing out on 1, distance, and 2, you might not be getting the cleanest of releases. Okay, next in the forehand is the reach back. So for a forehand, the reach back is non-linear like a backhand. A backhand, you're kind of pulling straight back. With a forehand, a straight reach back's not going to do you that good because it's kind of awkward. You kind of have to think of a forehand more as like a baseball style throw, golf swing, hockey, anything kind of like that. So instead of bringing it straight back, bring your arm up. So a big reach back with a forehand is up high. So this is a good thing to do, but I would advise against it to start. This is another reason why people kind of get a lot of flutter when they're releasing their forehand is because their reach back is too big. So to start off, I recommend you having a reach back probably no more than this far back, or even just keeping it kind of low to make sure you are flicking very quick, wrist active, nice and cocked back, and getting a smooth, fast release. I've gotten to the point where I have a very clean release. My wrist is very much trained and accustomed to throwing forehands, so I can afford to bring my arm back further. But also, one last thing, it can hurt your shoulder if you're not ready for it. So I recommend checking out Disc Golf Strong to you know, get a good warm up so you're not hurting your shoulder when you're throwing. So that's a little bit of the reach back, but there is more to the reach back than that. Like a backhand, you're reaching back, pulling across your body, and once you get close to your chest, this is turning into a backhand clinic too, which works. This is where you're generating a lot of power. You're bringing it close to your chest right before your hit point and firing forward. So you can't bring it close to your chest on a forehand. That's gonna jumble everything up. For a forehand, your chest is your hip, or kind of. For a forehand, normally you want to be a little bit more bent over at the hips so you can be over the disc, because if you're standing up and rolling your arm over, I mean, that's a certain shot, but what we're talking about is a good sustainable distance forehand. Is you want to be over your disc and you want to be releasing on a hyzer or flat most of the time, and by hinging at the hips, that will help you do so. So we talked about our reach back, we talked about how our hip is our chest in this case, and as you're coming through, at a certain point, your elbow is going to want to be about parallel with your hip. This is a really good technique right here. I am in the throwing position, what we'll talk about in a second. I'm lined up to throw a forehand shot correctly in this case. So think about your reach back, hinging at the hips, and kind of driving your elbow next to your hip. It doesn't have to be super tucked in, and it doesn't have to be near your hip the whole time. Just make sure at a certain point you're tucking in the elbow before you explode forward with your run up and lower body, which we're about to talk about. Now for the run up, how to incorporate your hips and then follow through. Then I'll kind of summarize and tie everything together. So the run up, there's a few different things you can do on a run up. I'll tell you mine and then I'll let you explore other styles. If I'm throwing a middle range distance shot, so an average distance shot, I'm starting with my right foot forward, kind of stepping out to the right a little bit, starting to turn my foot. My left foot's about 90 degrees. And then I don't do an X step. I don't cross my right foot over. I do kind of a little bit of shuffle. So I kind of use my energy to push this foot off to the ground, and it kind of trades places with the other one, and boom, right now I am in the position I need to be in to throw a forehand shot. You look at pretty much all the great forehand throwers, Germ, Sexton, they are all having their hips sideways from where they're going to throw. And for me personally, in this position, I'm focusing a lot of my weight on my back foot. And as I start bringing the disc across my body and starting the movement of my arm, the weight from my back leg transfers to my front leg, and I'm starting to explode my hips forward facing to the direction I want to go. So they're sideways, commencing the movement with my arm, pushing my hips forward and really driving my weight into my left foot. From there, I'm going to snap, release the disc. You shouldn't think about snapping the disc. You just let it happen, and kind of taking a step forward, letting your arm come across your body. Two things to help you kind of nail down the technique is, one, imagine you're holding a hammer and you are trying to nail a nail into the wall by slamming it hard into the wall, and also thinking about really pushing as much weight as you can into your front foot, and doing those two things simultaneously. And both of those will help you get that explosive motion you need in order to throw a forehand shot. And then what I said earlier about the step forward is kind of like the follow through. You let your weight travel forward by pushing your right foot forward, and letting your arm come across your body very nice and relaxed. So basically the forehand throw is 1, 2, 3, 4, come across, hit the nail, drive your foot into the ground, step forward, release. And one other thing to think about when you're doing all that is the release angle of your disc and the angle integrity. For most of us, the forehand is more of a utility than an average golf shot. So throwing an overstable disc covers a shot that's a little bit more difficult to get in a backhand style throw. Is a shot that goes out and then fades right if you're a right-handed player. But I think we should open up our minds and, you know, try to learn more than just the basic forehand shape. And that is throw some mids, throw some putters forehand. Really focus on throwing something straight. Maybe get like an instinct, an FD2, or a less stable disc, and really control the angle of the forehand. It will teach you so much about how your forehand works, and it will help you overall create so many different opportunities when you're in different situations, in the woods, out in the open, and you'll be able to play the wind better, you'll be able to play slopes better, you'll be able to play disc golf better. So explore your forehand by throwing different discs that you wouldn't imagine being good, because anyone can throw a overstable forehand poorly. You don't want to be that person. Be the person who can throw angles with it, control it. That will help you out so much. Okay, now I will go over what I just told you and kind of point it out in my own throw, so you can get a better understanding of how the forehand works, and you can see how I follow the basics of the forehand, but for some reason my body has like mutated and has been able to maybe get a little bit more distance, because I know, looking at some of the footage already, that it's a little bit freaky what happens to my body. So let's go look at the footage. All right, got the editing hat on. I just spliced together a bunch of clips from when I went out and threw in the field. We're gonna go over them, and we're gonna show you why I told you to do all those things out in the backyard. And you'll see that I do them too. Okay, so first off, we got me throwing that Color Glow FD3 that I had in my hand. And let's start. Right away, you notice that I start with my right foot forward. Then left foot. Left foot is about 90 degrees at this point. And then the X step / crossover. So this shot is a little bit shorter distance. And I noticed that when I throw a shorter distance shot, I tend to do a little bit more of an X step. I don't have the momentum to kind of like change one leg for another. It'll make more sense in a later clip, but I do an X step for a little bit shorter, more control style shot. But as you can tell here, I'm getting into the position. My hips are sideways. I have my weight loaded on my back foot. I'm tracking out my front foot. I place down my heel, and as soon as I place down my heel, it sends a message to the rest of my body and brain to start commencing the movement of my lower body, my upper body, my arm, and this is where the magic happens. I am snapping my hips forward, driving my back foot off into my front foot, coming up onto one leg and releasing the disc. Notice the release across my body. We'll look at this again and just a normal playback. Voila. This next shot, I was going for a little bit more distance, throwing a C-line FD3 here, Second run, a little more overstable. Not much different here, but I notice that I do a little bit less of a crossover, maybe a little bit more of a shuffle. But as you can see, again, I am loading my weight on my back right foot, transferring the weight, starting with the heel of my left foot, sends the message to my brain to drive my weight forward and release. This is cool. It'll kind of tell you a little bit more about the finesse side of a forehand game. I have a link in my hand, and I'm being a lot more deliberate with my footwork and really focusing on me being smooth. And if you notice here, I'm starting off a lot slower. I have a lot more of an X-step style in my throw because I need to slow my body down. And look at my reach back with the link. It's a little bit lower. It's not as high because I really need to focus on keeping the angle of the disc sharp. So this is what I kind of recommend you guys tailoring your forehand throw at first, because it's going to help you get control. And once you are able to figure something similar to this clip out, then you're going to be able to build on top of it going for more distance. But just notice how smooth I am trying to be with my throw here. This next one is an MD3. I'm kind of doing the same thing as the link, but I'm putting a little bit more speed behind it. If you notice right here, I am doing more of the shuffle, not as much of an X step, getting more speed into my throw. Smooth release, come up on one foot, palm facing the sky, release. Now, this is where everything changes a little bit. I'm throwing a S-Line DD3 here. I'm going for distance. As you can tell right away, I'm focusing on getting more energy. So I'm coming down into my throw a little bit more intensely, and feet are really dug into the ground. I got a lot of weight on my back foot, more so than normal. And at this point, this might be a familiar position. It looks like I'm about to throw a baseball, and that's kind of essentially what throwing a forehand is. Maybe you come a little bit lower, but as I drive my weight forward, I come off the ground because there's so much energy that I need to push my right leg off the ground and come out one foot, and I don't take a step forward. Taking a step forward is a pretty decent idea just to kind of get you accustomed to the follow through, but it's not something that you're going to do forever. So maybe do a few drills with taking a big step forward after you release the disc, just to make sure you're getting a good follow through. Here's another angle of me throwing a DD3. I'm not doing the X step because I'm putting more speed into my throw. Weight on the back foot, and look how big my reach back is. If I did this with the link would not be able to handle any power, but since I'm doing it with a DD3, it's able to do such. And then weight into my front foot, driving it through, weight into my heel, driving it forward, and then releasing. This clip is a little bit confusing. I was throwing a PD2 very hard, and this is a little bit different, and you'll see right here what makes no sense to me and how my body does it, but it's a big reason to why I'm able to throw a forehand as far as I can. So no X step at all. It's almost just like a weird shuffle. I'm really trying to get all the energy out of my lower body and really digging my right foot into the ground, stomping forward, and look at those teeth being grit. And look at this. This is what doesn't make sense to me. Most people's bodies won't work like this. They won't be able to get their forearm bent back as much. But notice, I got my wrist completely active. I have the cocked wrist, and that's essential for me to get that kind of slingshot effect. But this position is very awkward, and I don't recommend you trying to do this at first, or maybe at all. This is just kind of how my body works. I'm tall and lanky, so this is a somewhat comfortable position. It doesn't feel like anything bad's happening here. It doesn't feel like my elbow is getting ripped out of its socket. It just kind of happens that way. Boom, explode forward. Really low here because I was throwing like a low kind of fast shot, maybe a little bit of Anheuser. This next clip is just me doing a standard throw, just a different angle. But yes, basically right there, that's my forehand throw. So if you take everything I said from the backyard, I do pretty much everything there. I'd say the only thing I don't do is take the big step forward, but I already said it and I'll say it again. It's a way to create a good habit of getting a good follow through. So you just want to mess around with that. So hopefully this all helps. I think a few of you will come away with better forehands. This has been such a requested video for me to do just because, I don't know, apparently the people think I have a pretty good forehand. So I figure I'd try to share a few of my secrets, which really aren't secrets. It's just basic forehand form, but this is coming from my mouth. So hopefully that'll make a few people happy. And then the last thing I'll say is look at these last few clips. And I'm throwing lefty forehand. I know exactly what to do. My brain has all the knowledge of how to throw forehand, but it just doesn't work. I mean, look at this awkward position that I'm in. I mean, I'm doing hardly anything right. And that's because my body is not trained. The reason I can throw a forehand as well as I can right-handed is because I put so many reps in. And I can't stress this enough. Disc golf is all about practice. You can't just magically start throwing 500-foot forehand shots. You're gonna have to build up to it. And that goes for putting, backhand, approaches, anything in disc golf. You have to put the reps in. Your muscles have to grow accustomed to that movement in order for you to eventually succeed. Because look at these lefty throws, they're awful. Like, I'm not doing anything that I'm supposed to do. My brain knows what I'm supposed to do, but you know, it's just how it is. So don't be discouraged. Get out there and practice and break it down. Do one step at a time. Don't jumble your brain and do this all at once. First, maybe start off with the cocked back wrist or a short reach back, or focus on firing your hips forward, driving weight into your front foot. Take it a step at a time, and then eventually, if you are persistent enough, I believe that almost anyone can develop a forehand. So guys, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, keep on dreaming. Peace.